again, everyone. It's been a very busy time at ABLF City with some excellent guests joining us to give their knowledgeable perspective on the global issues that are affecting us all at this time of COVID. For this session on rethinking globalization, we're honored to have someone who's seeing the pandemic through the multicultural lens of British society firsthand, as he serves the United Arab Emirates as the ambassador to the United Kingdom, a role he's had since June of 2019. His Excellency Ambassador Mansoor Abulhoul studied in Britain before establishing a career in banking. He then moved back to his homeland to spearhead the family business Magrudi's, the UAE-based leading-based chain of bookstores, transitioning that business to the digital era. And Ambassador Abulhoul has been a leading figure in promoting literacy in the Arab world. We're very honored to have him join us. Great, Ambassador, great you could join us for this event at ABLF City.
Thank you, Riz. It's a real pleasure to be with you today, and an honor really to be included in some fantastic speakers you've had for this season's ABLF Talks.
No, it's really well supported. It's been fantastic, yeah. And
clearly ABLF doing some wonderful work promoting the Asian story. Given the extraordinary challenges and opportunities facing the world right now, I think few organizations are doing more to stimulate important discussion amongst policymakers and business leaders.
And that's why it's great to have you on board. Listen, so I want to start asking you, Ambassador, if I could, with a lot of analysis pointing to the fact that there is a trend towards deglobalization. It seems the world's community is almost taking a U-turn when it comes to connectivity. What do you see as what sort of impact do you see this having on, in the short term at least, when it comes to the geopolitical relationship between the West and Asia?
Yes, I think when we start to emerge from the pandemic, we'll need to refocus our attention on long-standing challenges, some of which have been obviously exacerbated by the crisis. And we're doing so in the UAE. We'll be guided by our long-standing commitment to multilateralism, anti-extremism, respect for national sovereignty, peaceful resolution of conflicts, good governance, and sustainable development. At the global level, I very much see that we need to refocus our attention on managing the evolution towards a post-COVID landscape. Despite seeing the return of great power politics, the UAE will work hard to strengthen multilateralism and the rules-based order. The pandemic has highlighted that we are one international community and we need to work together to tackle common challenges. It is the only effective way of addressing challenges such as the economic ones we face and health crisis, from climate change to terrorism, poverty, and reoccurring armed conflicts. A multilateral approach is clearly in the interest of small states, but ultimately it is also in the interest of great powers. There can be no doubt that the US and China have thrived under the international order of the last 75 years. There has, as you were saying in your question, been a lot of chatter about deglobalization, but any attempt to reverse the gains of the last few decades would be an enormous mistake. Globalization has been massively beneficial to the world. It has hugely improved the range and choice of products enjoyed by people all around the world, and it's helped lift billions out of desperate poverty. I also think the extent to which globalization might go into reverse has been exaggerated. There were some issues at the start of the pandemic, for example, with the flow of PPE equipment being interrupted at national borders. But that is an argument for building up national stockpiles of essential materials, not for an attempt to be self-sufficient in one's production. Is anyone seriously talking about reshoring entire industries that produce things that can be done more cheaply and better elsewhere? The free movement of people is another area where I think things are slightly exaggerated. Yes, it has been a terrible time for airlines and cruise ships, but I'm convinced people will start globetrotting the moment it's safe to do so. In fact, the enormous pent-up demand, I suspect, with the enormous pent-up demand, I expect we'll see an extraordinary boom with the international leisure and travel industry sectors coming back. The UAE is certainly not turning its back on globalization. The government has taken very serious steps to make it easier for foreign residents to both stay in the UAE and come to the UAE in the first place. We have introduced a whole new class of residence visa for retirees. And the structural and legal reform we initiated in the last 6 months is unprecedented and is aimed at positioning the UAE not only to emerge from the pandemic stronger than before, but also to harness opportunities going forward.
So, I'm looking at the other side of the coin, Ambassador, what step can political leaders take to eliminate problems such as social and economic disparities that many see as one of the major flaws of globalization?
Yes, well, I think at the global level, throwing globalization into reverse would only increase, as I was saying, the social and economic disparities between rich and developing worlds. The jobs and economic activity created by globalization have been crucial to raising billions out of poverty. But it is true that within the developed world, there is a perception that there have been winners and losers of globalization. It is a problem, but it can be fixed. It can be fixed without trying to bring back long-lost industries. It is interesting being here in the UK when we look at sort of disparities caused by globalisation, because it is central to the British government's agenda. Boris Johnson calls it levelling up. The idea is to try and bring back the UK's depressed towns and regions up to the level of the richest. But the Prime Minister is no enemy of globalisation. In fact, he says he wants the UK to be a beacon of free trade. So the UK is looking at policies on infrastructure and investment and education reform, not closing its borders and imposing tariffs.
I've been traveling back and forth a little bit during this time, and I've got to say, congratulations to the UAE and to Dubai for having the tourism. The flights seem to be packed when I'm coming in. So that's great that there is this this flow of people. And in fact, the opening of the UAE-UK corridor was a testimony, I guess, to the strength of the relationship between the two countries. How has that move impacted tourism and trade in practical terms?
Yeah, I think I really have on the air corridor. We're really proud of the agreement that was reached. My team in London did a huge amount of work communicating to the British government the extraordinary work that the UAE has done to combat the COVID-19 virus. So it's a real vote of confidence by the UK in the UAE. But I think it's early days to really see the effects on the tourist sector, and that's not quite fully clear yet. The UK has only, as we were speaking just before we came on, has only just come out of lockdown, and during the time prior, international travel was heavily discouraged. There's still many areas in the country that are bound by Tier 3 restrictions, which makes foreign travel very difficult. I don't have the latest numbers when it comes to the tourist sector, but I think there will be at the start of a catch-up boom. And we see lots of travel articles in newspapers about holidays in the UAE, and a few anecdotal stories of people booking their winter sun holidays and even family Christmases in the UAE. I'm sure that is the case. That stands to reason. British people have gone through a tough year of being stuck in their homes and not being able to travel abroad. And so it's fantastic. The UAE is really a fantastic place for them to go with the gorgeous weather that we have at this time and the many very attractive deals.
I didn't want to make you feel jealous, but I left the drizzling rain of the UK just a couple of days ago and walked into this amazing weather here. So yes, it is something here.
I think the word sort of got out about the UAE being the COVID secure setups that we have, hotels, restaurants, and leisure sector. That's really certainly got out. I've heard that, and you can travel to the UAE with peace of mind, and everything will be clean, hygienic. So I think it's one of the best places at the moment to go in the world.
And actually, the better weather means people are less prone to kind of regular seasonal flus and things, so their immunity is a little bit better as well. I think certainly people are feeling good in the sunshine here.
Yes. Yeah.
Quick question for you then, Ambassador. While the world veers towards localization, what direction is the UAE taking to steer its international trade and political relations in the post-COVID era?
Yeah, well, to steal sort of, or borrow let's say the phrase of Boris Johnson, the UAE, as we all know, sees itself very much as a beacon of free trade. We believe that system creates the best outcome for everyone. And of course, supporting the UAE's position as a trade gateway in the Middle East, Asia, and Central Asian republics to boost exports has been key to how we've developed the economy in the UAE. So we're determined to sustain our position as a regional hub for business, finance, transport and travel, and we're continuing to invest in all of those things. As I was saying earlier, we've seen quite a lot of reform in terms of the structure of our government that happened over the summer to ensure we're as agile as possible and capable of making the best policy decisions. And of course, the legal reforms that have now helped that make the UAE one of the most progressive countries in the world. It means people from all over the world can comfortably live and work in the UAE.
So interestingly enough, just a little while ago, I was talking here on the ABLF Talks Live with the COO of DMCC, the huge and very successful free zone, Farial Ahmadi, and she was saying that the Abraham Accords, the connecting Israel more closely to the Arab world, and especially now the UAE, have been incredibly beneficial in terms of getting businesses starting to sign up, and certainly in the commodity sector. And I wonder, what do you see to be the larger ramifications of the in the UK of the Abraham Accord, and how do you expect that accord to impact the UAE's relationship with Europe as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, when we look at the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with the state of Israel has really been born out of the UAE's policy of openness and desire to reduce polarization of the world and the region that we live in. And it was born out of a desire for a much needed strategic shift, a new pragmatic vision for the region. If we talk the UK, one ramification on the issue that we see is anti-Semitism in the UK, which has been in the news in the last couple of years. For too many people, anger about Israel had fed, I think we can all admit, had fed hatred for Jews. So I think when we look at the Accords, such a strategic shift encompassing an extraordinarily powerful message when a Muslim country, Arab nation, announces that it's prepared to make peace with Israel and to build a deep, lasting, meaningful relationship based on mutual friendship and respect. That sends a hugely powerful message in the UK here. For that reason, the Abraham Accords have been hugely appreciated in the UK by the UK's Jewish community. They've also been warmly welcomed by the British government, and I think the rest of Europe too. So from their perspective, there's no downside. Everyone wants to see further stability in the Middle East and the Arab-Israeli conflict put to bed with a just solution to the Palestinian issue. And I think there was realization that continuing the old policy of the past, we're just not getting anywhere. The other impact of the Abraham Accords on the UAE is our status as a global player. We've been growing in stature in the geopolitical affairs for some time now. We've been a committed partner for the West for many years, but I think with the Abraham Accords, which were so dramatic, unexpected, and groundbreaking, we've just underlined to the world the fact that the UAE is an important on the global stage.
So I'm going to, Ambassador, if I may, I'm going to put a question that's come in from our chat. We've got a chat going on as people are joining us online, obviously. So this question that came in from Ibrahim Jamil asks, do you believe this COVID-19 pandemic and virus has made nations find ways to become independent from many things, including from food production and production and manufacturing, because that dependency, because of the dependency, and now moving away from the, the pandemic, where the countries have found it difficult to depend totally on other partnering countries with the economic output issue?
I think from a perspective, we have a food security strategy, and we have an excellent minister who heads that, and certainly looking at sort of food security, water scarcity, all those aspects. The UAE had been quite progressive in sort of adopting that strategy and fared well through the pandemic. But I do think it's a broader. We live in a very sort of harsh environment in terms of how we can produce things. So it's part of a longer term strategy. But I don't think we can completely walk away from international collaboration and alliances, and so I don't think we'll see a complete reverse in terms of production. We'll still rely on that, but we clearly need to we need to embrace the food security strategy and produce more domestically. But that will take international collaboration and supply as well.
Yeah, no, I had the pleasure of speaking with Her Excellency Mariam Al-Maheri, the Food Security Minister, here at the talks, and I was actually quite pleasantly surprised how much progress is being made on food security within the UAE, and actually I now have my UAE blueberries.
Ah, wonderful.
So it's quite amazing. So we had Erica Spencer also writing on the chat with a question asking, do you think investments to both countries will improve in 2021? Presumably meaning obviously UAE and UK.
Yeah, I think so. Most definitely. I think it's there's clear priority sectors that are the industry technologies of the future, where the UAE has the desire to diversify to a knowledge-based economy. So I think there'll be a huge sort of energy to take the relationship to a new level. We've been during the pandemic, we were working hard to reconstitute and relaunch the UAE UK Business Council. We have great ambition to take the trading relationship to new levels. So I think you'll see a real push in terms of those priority sectors and increasing trade and openness of our economies.
An interesting question just came in again on the chat from Neha Kapoor, who's saying, what has been the implication of large-scale globalization on sustainability, and what measures are needed to ensure sustainable growth, which is the need of the hour?
Yeah, I mean, sustainable growth is key, is one of our key pillars of our national agenda. So I think it's one that we need to. The UK will be hosting COP26 next year. We'll be sending a delegation there. I think if we look to Expo as well, one of the key themes within Expo is sustainability. So I think it's one that we won't be away from anyone's agenda in terms of how we move forward.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was just thinking with when I was back in the UK just recently, Brexit was back on the table, and news was dominated by that again. I think people had a bit of a break from it while the COVID took over. But I wonder how now you're managing and dealing with a rather full plate, because you're having to also adjust the UAE's relationship with the UK in light of the way Brexit will also move forward.
Yeah, the UAE stands as the largest trading partner for the UK in the Arab world. And so we look to global Britain. We're one of the largest trading partners, and as a bloc as well, the GCC represents £45 billion. So I think there's huge opportunity there as Britain emerges, and obviously they're heavily engaged in trade negotiations now with the EU as we speak. So, I think we look to and the UK government and the EU is very much looking to a trading free trade agreement from this, and so it's one that we hope that they'll both arrive at that. But we very much look to a post-Brexit UK and driving forward our agenda, and there'll be many economic opportunities from that.
And of course, the UAE has had a long and very strong historic bond with the UK as well, as we know, with huge presence of UK citizens in the UAE too. So I'm sure that kind of bond has also been very good in driving how the relationships continue to strengthen as well. Absolutely.
I mean, we have 100,000 British people, over 100,000 British people that live in the UAE. Have chosen to make that their home. We have normal times we have over 1.5 million that visit the UAE, and we have students that study here, Emirati students that study here in the UK. So there's a huge and visitors, and it's almost home from home for a lot of Emiratis, and I think it's one that we will really celebrate as we look forward to next year, and it will be the UAE's Golden Jubilee. Our 50th anniversary, and it will be a year to celebrate UAE-UK relations, and I think that's one that will bring much strength and almost a springboard for how we look forward to the next 50 years. So very, very exciting time between the two nations.
And it's interesting. You and I are talking across, the internet on this call, and it has showed how life has changed. I mean, I was a lot at physical events, and I travelled a lot, and I'm sure for you, there's also been an adjustment. And I wonder how, to what degree, you feel this digitization of the way we communicate will remain to some degree, even in the post-COVID era.
I think so. There's certainly going to be this element of hybrid there, and I think it's that we're now engaging on a much faster. The pace seems to have almost picked up because the logistics, can be overcome. You don't need to travel for many events, and that means that the pace has picked up. So, but I do think that with the prospects of vaccines on all fronts looking well, that we will, the desire to engage in person and meet, that first of us connecting and being together will be there. And I think as soon as we engage in person, I have some meetings at the embassy now. You can still have work meetings. It's almost as if when you meet someone else, it's almost sort of a liberation. So I think the pendulum will swing the other way as things become safe and secure.
It was nice to see even Prince Charles has the traditional Indian greeting now rather than shaking hands half the time.
Yeah. Very good.
So back to our chat room, which has been pretty active, if I may please, Ambassador. Rahul wrote in and asked, with countries being forced to close borders, what has been the biggest impact on global supply chains? Would there be a return to pre-pandemic times?
Well, yeah, I think things have definitely changed, but reshoring of industries, for instance, that you can produce, that quality at that price, I think that might have been over exaggerated. But I think there'll be, countries have certainly looked at their national reserves for particular things, and I think it's one where certainly the medical sector and being prepared for future pandemics and things like that we take very seriously. So I think things will re-establish. I mean, we've got to be realistic that we'll always go to the dynamics of sourcing a product from the best place, the best quality at the best price. I think that will come back because that's sort of a natural economic trend. But I think there'll be some elements where countries will be more prepared as they go forward.
So a follow-up question that came in from Sarah on the chat says, what would be some of the significant growth opportunities that will emerge in the new trade ecosystem post the pandemic?
So I think we're all looking at sort of, I think it's, well, if we look to, easing of market access and easing of trade, I think that will still be very much front and center. But we're also looking at industries of the future, tech, AI, all those aspects, education skills. I think these are renewable energy. So I think, those are all the key, and of course, recovering our tourism and hospitality sectors, aviation sector. I think that sort of will be prioritized as we look to recover and rebuild our economies.
A question that came in from William, it touches on some of the things you've already mentioned, but you could expand on this. How do you see the UAE-UK relationship transforming and getting stronger in the years to come?
I think we should commend the extraordinary, as a look back, it's an extraordinarily strong relationship, and I think it's one that stands on a firm foundation and strict. But I think there's incredible alignment in terms of industrial strategies, in terms of priority sectors. So I think you'll really see those sectors be built up further. So I think there's huge potential to take this relationship to a new level.
We've got a wonderfully active chat room here. Satyen in Dubai writes in and says, what has been the impact on European markets and sentiments in the wake of the news regarding positive progress on the vaccine?
Yeah, I mean, I would be no expert in terms of sort of vaccines, but I think we definitely can all say that the arrival of vaccines and receiving the regulatory approval, I think within a year has lifted people's sentiment, and of course markets will be driven by people's sentiment, and so I think we've seen a pickup there, and it's clearly these vaccines have to be administered to people, and that takes time. So I don't think we're out of the tunnel yet, but it's certainly provided that, and the markets are very, very agile and nimble in terms of reacting to those announcements.
I must say, no, I guess no one expected things to go on for so long with the pandemic. I mean, literally, we've lost most of 2020, which is a bit of a shame. But I guess we've also learned a lot. What do you think you've learned the most in this COVID year, so to speak?
Well, if anything, it's that in times of crisis, you in fact tend to engage more with your counterparts in the world that I now work in, and so if anything, it's sort of forged stronger relationships and links, and we saw that through the early parts of the pandemic. So I think that's one that I think was the amount of work and collaboration and efforts, and particularly where we have such strong basis to this relationship, that actually never take anything for granted, really, because when you have an old friend, make sure that you always keep in contact and you're good to one another, because you're extraordinarily strong assets in times of trouble.
I guess to some degree it has shown the resilience of the human spirit, how we've all managed at a global level with this, really. So I'm going to end with a quick question here that came in from Fahad on the chat. And it's just a fun one, really, we can wrap up with. It says, what are you most excited about at Expo 2020 Dubai?
Oh, well, the chance to visit, but I mean, I think it's visiting the UK pavilion will be interesting for me, given it's so magical, and being designed by Es Devlin. I think, and just seeing the event delivered, I think it will be ever more true to its purpose. It has been postponed by a year, but for good reason. But I think it's just going to be one of these magnificent sort of cultural events never been delivered in the Arab world before, and so it's one that I look forward to. Just all the different visits that we're going to have going out there. So I think it's just going to be bringing together opportunity, innovation, and finding solutions for some of the most pressing challenges of our time.
I always refer to it as Expo 2020 plus. I keep saying that it should be rebranded 2020 plus, because that's positive, and it's coming in a year later, but we're all still very geared up for it, which is quite fun as well.
That sounds great. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry.
No, I'll let Her Excellency Reem Al Hashimi. I'm sure you connect with her. You can.
I know. Yeah. In fact, we had Nabil Al Ali, the executive director, as well, and I said to him, "It'd be a nice spin on it if we did." Well, listen, it's a fantastic opportunity to speak with you, Ambassador. Really a delight. I do hope we get to maybe share some fish and chips at the UK Pavilion.
Yes.
The Expo as well. But it's wonderful to talk with you, and I wish you a lot of luck with the work you're doing now in connecting the two countries so well. And look forward to seeing you again in person at some point soon. Sorry about the weather there. I know it's bad, but I'm going to enjoy myself in the sunshine here in the coming hours. So thank you so much for joining us at ABLF City for the talks on this session.
Thank you, Riz. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you to yourself for the excellent moderation and for the questions that came in. They're brilliant. Thank you so much.
It's been popular. We've got so many questions in, and there's never enough time to go through them all, but at least we got quite a few in. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Stay safe and be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
All the best. Take care. Thank you. And to you, our participants joining us online for this session, thank you very much for sending in those questions. It was wonderful to have the ambassador there. Don't go away. There is more coming up, so stay tuned.